Good afternoon, welcome, and thanks to everyone for their time today. I'm Anne Harper, I'm the Chief of Staff here at Koordinates. Eli Chadwick is our sales engineer, and today I'm going to fly through a few slides and introduce Koordinates and set the scene. Eli is then going to take you on a tour through the portal and show you REST services. And online, we also have Jonathan Ball. Jonathan will be available to answer any questions that may come up during this presentation. If you have a look at the little bar at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A form. If you jump in there and throw any questions in, Jonathan will be online to answer them. If they're too technical for us, or if we get too many, then we can always follow up with you afterwards via email. So yeah, please don't be shy. So this webinar will be recorded and we will send out a link to everybody here that's attended. So yeah, you can always check back if there's something that you missed. So Koordinates is a geospatial data storage with a consumer grade portal. We have designed it to make accessing data really easy for everybody. Organizations or projects can have their own site with their own branding. There is no IT needed. It's really easy to set up a new site as projects come along. All management is done through the portal UI or APIs that your team can set up to automate updates. Users self-serve, so this means they get to pick their area of interest, their format of choice, their projections. CAD users can get their CAD formats, their GIS data in CAD formats, and this includes point cloud. And of course, newly introduced REST. Koordinates is ISO 27001 certified. This is a standard for information security. Then you as the administrator control all the permissions for your site. This means that you can have customers who may even be competitors with sensitive data all on the same site, but as you're managing the permissions, you can keep it all completely separate. So how it works. I'm just going to give you this quick overview. So you have your data here, which could be all these different types. You then load it into your portal here via either, say, an ETL, like you may have FME, you may choose to automate it using APIs or web service ingestions, or we've got a beautiful data management web app to make it really easy. So you can do things like just drag and drop files in and they will upload. Then for your customers, they are going to be likely to be a very wide range of people. They can access data through the white labeled data portal, so that has all your branding on it, and then they can take static files off it and consume it in their own software. You may have developers or GIS professionals who like, say, again, Esri-REST services or the other APIs and tile services that we offer, which they could plug into other apps that you're running for your business. Or you may choose your ETL tools, and we also have things like PDF, and a lot of people do like to just view data when it's sitting in the portal. So we really cater to a wide variety of users. So no matter what format you have uploaded your data in, APIs will be served off the data. We have a services tab where you can create these API keys, and this is where you will soon find the REST option. So why is REST exciting? For those Esri organizations already publishing REST, most of you need to scale staff, licenses, servers, and databases if you want to publish even more REST services. With Koordinates, you effectively have IT as a service, how I described earlier. This makes REST services from the Koordinates Cloud really easy, as Koordinates scales with your use when you need it. We complement and elevate your existing stack by relieving some of that heavy lifting. If you are not an Esri shop, it means you can now service your Esri customers and make it really easy for them to consume your data. They can already download static files through the Koordinates portals like I showed you, but this means they can now easily consume within their favorite Esri apps, and that's probably most likely going to be a goal. For those of you who know the Koordinates workflow, you simply upload the data like normal and choose to add REST with the click of a button. So that's it. But I will stop there and hand over to Eli now to walk you through.
Cool, thank you, Anne. All right, so I'm going to get some data off the LINS data service, and then I'm going to load that into a Koordinates demo site. And then finally, once that's loaded, we're going to push it out to an AGOL or ArcGIS Online web map and build a web app off it. Just to show you the end-to-end flow, I'm going to try and stay focused on just these things, but may drift a little bit. So first step, we're off to LDS. Of course, you don't have to go to LDS. You can take your data from wherever you like. You may already have a bunch of data sets sitting around that you want to publish up to Koordinates. The other thing I'm going to do today is use no desktop software, which is another quite big advantage of doing it this way. You don't actually have to publish out of desktop software. You just simply copy files or ingest them somehow onto your coordinate site. So I'm going for this Powerline data set, added it to the map viewer. I'm going to do an export, take all of the defaults and hit export. That was remarkably fast. So now I've got a link here. If I hit the link, that'll download that file. That was also really fast, which is good to see. So I have here in my downloads folder, not there, here. That's the file that I just pulled down. Next step is, how do we get this into, so again, this could be data you've got lying around anywhere. It could be geo packages, Esri file geodatabases, shapefiles, CSVs, number of different formats. From a coordinates perspective, we're not fussed what it is that you load. So now we're finished with Lind. We can close out and get out of there and off to this site. So to ingest data onto the site, just if you're not familiar with coordinates, we've got two buttons across the top. I'm admin, so I've got this guy. Data turns the data browser on and off. Map turns the map on and off. Some filters, allows you to filter down to the data type that you're looking for. Vectors, point clouds, rasters, grids. And you can have a bunch of categories that are predefined. You can have regions. All our data on this site is Oceania. So you can set a bunch of these. It essentially forms an AND criteria, and it will filter these candidates down to just the ones that you're looking for. But today I'm going into the data management area. So now that I'm back here, I can open up Manage. This is where you'll do all of the ingestion of data from. What I want to first do, however, is go to these users and groups. This has quite a lot of relevance to these Esri REST services. This is how we manage permissions. So I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to call it maybe just REST. There's a bunch of other features around all of these things, but I'm just going to go for the minimum viable product, i.e. do as little as possible to get the job done. So I've made a group. These guys are going to own any data that I import. And now I go off to Manage. I can close the map out, don't need it. And we'll do an upload. So I am going to do, you could drag and drop the file onto here, or I can simply click on that button there and head off to the data that I just downloaded, 308, that looks like us. I'm going to assign it to the group REST that I just created. I'm the only member of that group. I can add a number of other members to that group. You can change the permissions of the people that you add to the group. You can give them admin privileges. Or simply access data. So I am admin. I've got the data come through. This is an upload section. This contains all the data that I've uploaded across HTTPS or done an upload from my machine. They don't live here forever. They'll disappear after a certain amount of time. I think we clean it out on about, when they get about 7 to 10 days old, they disappear. We don't charge people for this area, so it doesn't come out of your entitlements for the data that you have stored on your site. This is simply an area where you can ingest data from. So if I come in here and we go into the geo package, which is what I chose, and now inside the geo package, I'll find a data set. I'm going to do an import. I'm going to set next to nothing. The title by default is locked to the XML metadata. I'm just going to go with what it is. The description is also locked to the metadata. You could change that to a custom description. You could also change that to a custom title. I'll do none of that. Attachments, you can attach. You can either upload or you can browse to a document that you've already uploaded. When a user downloads the data set, they'll get that attachment with it. Gives you the ability to add additional items to a downloadable feature. Owned by my REST group that I just created. I'm not going to assign it to a category, not going to assign a license, you could do Creative Commons. I guess I just did. Primary key, I'm going to set this to this primary key. It's quite important for if you're going to do updates to this layer. If you aren't going to update it, don't even worry about it. But if you are, the primary key is how we're going to scan incoming changes and create inserts, updates, and deletes, i.e. change sets or deltas. Elevation, not relevant. I'm going to go right on down here and click import, and that's going to kick off the import process. So this data set, you can, once it has been imported, you can come into access and toggle the ability to permissions access to the data set. You can also come into map services, and there you can add cartography to the layer. The cartography will be associated with the layer as it is stored in coordinates and as it is viewed in the map viewer. When people download it, it does not follow the data down. However, when you do add it, it will have an influence upon the tile services, WMTS and the WFS. The Esri services will not have it, so you will have to style it once you get the data into AGOL or Arc Enterprise. So any consuming application that can take Esri REST will be able to ingest these feature services. While that's uploading, it shouldn't take too long, but I'll just cruise back over to the upload area and mention you don't have to do your uploads like this. You might store your data in an Amazon S3 bucket. So you essentially would create a CloudFormation template, and that will link the back end of your site into the S3 bucket, and then it's a simple drag and basically ingest straight out of S3. This is being able to scrape from an ArcGIS REST endpoint. So again, enterprise, portal, server, AGOL, any of those things. So we've long had the ability to pull data in from Esri land. The great thing about having the feature services now is we've got the ability to push back into it. You can also download the data as a file geodatabase or a shapefile if you so desire. This is a data gateway which we can install, which will get you into through tricky firewalls into your organization. That's a Postgres database that's online, and a WFS or web feature service. So those are more advanced methods of ingestion, which you would probably use if you were either pulling in really massive files or you wanted to have set up some kind of an automated update process. If I go back to manage data, that guy should have come in, and it has. Joy. So now I can go back to my data browser and sort by recently added. And here I will find this guy. So that's the data set that I've just added. It is not public. It is only shared with members of the REST group that I created. And that at present only comprises of me. But if I did want to share this data set out with other people, I can simply invite them to the site, add them to the group that has permissions to access the site, and they will inherently gain permission to this layer. I will just show you this guy that I'd set up earlier, which is the same data set, and I've done it basically in case that one didn't import. You never know, it did though, so you don't have to use this one. But one thing that did happen with this guy is what I had first done was imported just the South Island, and then I did an update where I've added in the North Island. This is where the data, as it becomes ingested, gets mirrored off to the cart repositories. From here, you can clone the data set down. If you did want to do a clone of this data set, you'll get the whole history of it. You can roll back to a previous version. These will also be reflected in what you're probably more used to seeing, which are the change sets. So this is the initial data set. This is the update to it. You can create a change set and pull down any incrementals between those two and update your underlying data. Just thought I'd mention that. Now, under services and APIs, we've always had WMTS. You can come in here and you can grab the URL and plug it into whatever you're ingesting from. That has always had a problem going into AGOL because it had a 3,000 feature limit, which I believe you can now configure, but not all the way up to many. I think it goes up to 60,000 or something. So if you've got a bunch of data you want to send into AGOL, you might struggle with WFS is actually what I'm talking about there. So there you can get your get capabilities and your all capabilities. You can also generate a change set, spatial queries. So you can plug these guys into your application and do simple lat-long type spatial queries and a few other types. I mentioned cart earlier. If you want to clone this layer down, you're just going to grab whatever type of authentication you want to run with, and then you will say cart clone that or that, and that will pull down a repository containing the entire history. Sidetracked Esri-REST. So that will now appear underneath these services. In the future, we envisage adding a bunch of new types of methods of accessing data. This is where you would come to find them under the Services and APIs tab. First thing you want to do is create an API key. This will be associated with your user. To access Esri-REST, all I need to do is I'll create a DA, data access. I don't need to go in and set the manual scope. I guess while I'm here, you can set the scope for all the different things you want to do. Everything I'm doing is API first, i.e. front end calling API endpoints. If you want to automate any of the things that I'm doing, you would need to come in here and set the scope of your API key so that it's sufficient to do those. So if you're pushing the tables or you're configuring user stuff, this is where you would come in and say, hey, I need access to all that thing, to those things. To access the services, I only need data access. It's generally good practice to set the minimum scope on an API key. So I'll just leave that as a DA. That's created a new API key. I can copy that and hit done. If it's an API key, you only get one chance to copy it, and after that we can seal it for pretty obvious reasons. But these access onlys, you can come back and review them. So for instance, there's my DA key. I can add a later date. However, if I'd pushed the scope up, you wouldn't be able to do that. So you need to pop that somewhere safe. So now I can say, here's my DA, that is my key. It's plugged into my feature service URL. Except I'm not doing this one, am I? I'm going to do the one that I just added. So if I go over to the services and APIs and go down to Esri-REST, my new API key will follow me. In fact, I've got access to any that I've created from here, and it automatically populates into the feature service URL. So if I grab a copy of that and drop it into a browser, there is a bog standard feature service. So if we want to do some interesting things with that, I'm going to head on over to ArcGIS Online, jump into the content area. And there's a number of different ways you can do this. I'm by no means an expert, but I do know how to do it this one particular way, well, a few ways. So if I hit new item, I'm going to link to an ArcGIS server or something really similar to it. I can drop in the URL there. It should retrieve, so it's recognized that this is a ArcGIS server web service, well, a web service. If I say next, I can now, I'll just leave the titles as is. I'm going to do the old put no tags, no summary, and I'll just save that. So now I've got a New Zealand power line center lines topo, 1 to 250K. I can see down here that it's pulled in the layer that I wanted to. I'm going to open that up in a map viewer, make sure that it's actually working. And there we have the lines coming in. It's still going to do that AGOL thing where it generalizes the lines and then slowly feeds down to allow you to at least see them while it's trying to understand what they are. That's fairly typical of anything you add. Let's go to Palmerston North. I'm going to change the style to something that's not blue, like red. Done. So now if I save my web map, I'm just going to call it power. All right, so there I've got a web map consuming a feature service that was published into Koordinates. Now when I come down, hit create app, let's put it into an application. I'm going to go for the simplest one I possibly can, which I believe is basic or simple or something like that. Basic, yep. Let's choose basic. I'm just going to call it power. Create the app. So now that we're actually in ArcGIS Online, you are going to be needing to follow the permission rules of ArcGIS Online. The API that's reading from coordinates will be the API loaded against the user that you created the API key for. And if I just let that load up, we should still be on Palmy. And it's red, winning. So if I hit publish and confirm, cool. I want to change the share settings. I'm going to make it public. Now, most people probably don't want to make it public. I am just for the sake of it, but if you wanted to be sharing it with members of an organization, they are going to need a license to achieve that. Great, so that is inherently saying if you're going to make this public, you're going to have to make your web map public too, which I'm happy to do. So that's all updated. Now we hit publish, confirm, and essentially we now have a web map. So if I copy that, close that, open up a new one of these and drop in my link, I've now got a Esri web map plugged into a web app that's publicly consumable eating services that I'm publishing out of Koordinates. And I've obviously gone with a small one here because it would be around for maybe too long if I was pushing massive amounts of data around. It will work for larger amounts of data. You can put scale dependencies in there or zoom range dependencies. But essentially the goal here was to show you that it is possible to take data from this guy here and pipe it through into here. So the next thing I wanted to show you was how would we deal with permissions back over here in Coordinates land. So I've got if I go into the groups, users and groups, and I go into the REST group, and I'm going to open up the REST group. Say I wanted to share this data with a user, a named user, which we don't charge for. I can simply say, let's add a user. I've got my Gmail account. I want to allow myself to access the data only. So by hitting add, I'm now in the group with access data. I could have said manage data. That would make you a paid seat. So be careful there. But essentially, what this configuration allows me to share data with an external user. So if I go off to another, so this is my Gmail account logged into that exact same ggc.coordinates.com. There was no data prior to my sharing that. If I now update my view, I should find that that layer is now available. So I can do things with it, like add it to the map. And from here, I can do my export and all the usual coordinatesy things from here. You can change the format, you can reproject it. The point really is that if I go back to my coordinate site and I go up to the main screen, I've got a number of groups set up. If I go down to the REST group, I get an idea of what users can see when they come to the site. So I can filter by group here. What you would do is that you would segment all your customers into groups, invite them to the site. You would allow them to be able to see the data, or you would publish it via Esri. The big difference, I guess, is that if I just go back to a view of the entire site, so the data set that I just added is this guy. If I add him to a map, so now that's over there, I can close out of my data viewer, data browser. Now I'm looking at the layer that I've shared with myself on Gmail. I can do things like, let's make it 3D, let's cruise right in, let's make it satellite. I could add a number of layers to this map. I just have the one layer in here. And once I've got to the point where I've added all of the information to the map and it's ready to go, in fact, if I say no base map, I can see the features, turn it back on, they are there. So what I can do now is I can say, I'm going to share this. I'm going to share it with the REST group, and I'm going to share that. So this has created a map viewer that I can send to people, in this case myself. If I close out of there, I've now got a link, and if I was to send that off to this user, this Gmail user, and they were to drop it into a browser, they should get the same map viewer with the same layers, all pre-packaged and ready to go. So there we have it. Just verify that the feature service is there. Oh, I don't want to do that. So I can see my power lines are in there. I can do spatial queries. I can do all of those sorts of things. So really the point I wanted to make here was that what I've done there with using coordinates is I've created a map viewer that I can share with a named user without having to pay for them to have a license. And then back over here, I've created an application that is shared with everybody. However, if I wanted to share it with just users, named users, I'd have to have a license for it. But the main takeout here really is that under services and APIs, anything that you publish will have Esri-REST, which you can then pipe into ArcPro, ArcMap, any of the other Arc things, and consume it quite happily without having to do the, well, depending on how you want to share it, you will either go through Esri and have to have a licensed user consuming it, or be public and not have a licensed user, or you can go through Koordinates and use our shared map viewers and not have to pay for the consumption of that map. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it there for now.